The peaceful planet of Kella was dying. For 3 months, the bird-like aliens called the Kellan had watched their blue skies turn red with smoke. The metal ships of the Vrak Empire hung like dark clouds above their crystal cities. Elder Tira stood. In the communication tower, her silver feathers dulled with worry. Around her, younger Kellans worked at glowing screens, trying to send messages across the galaxy. "Have we received any replies?" Tira asked. "Nothing from the Galactic Council," said Nix, a young technician. "The Federation says they cannot help. The Alliance claims they are too busy." Tira's heart sank. The Vrak had already taken half their planet. Their warrior priests demanded the Kellans surrender their sacred crystals, the power sources that kept their world alive. Without them, Kella would become a dead rock. "Elder, there is one more signal," Nix said quietly. "From a small planet called Earth. They want to know our location." The other Kellans laughed sadly. Earth was known throughout the galaxy as a death world, a planet so dangerous that most aliens thought nothing intelligent could live there. The few reports spoke of creatures that drank poison for fun and fought wars for sport. "Deathworlders cannot help us," said another Kellan. "They probably want to take our crystals too." But Tira remembered old stories her grandmother told. Stories of a species that never gave up, that fought against impossible odds. "Send them our coordinates," she ordered. "Elder, are you sure? What choice do we have?" Outside, another Vrak bomber flew overhead. The ground shook as it dropped its weapons on the city below. Kellan children cried in the shelters. Their beautiful singing had been replaced by the sounds of war. In space, a Vrak fleet commander laughed as he watched the planet burn. "These bird people are weak," he told his officers. "Tomorrow we take their crystal mines. Then Kella belongs to the Empire." The Vrak were large, strong aliens with thick gray skin and 4 arms. They had conquered dozens of worlds, always taking what they wanted. No one had ever stopped them. But far away, on a blue planet orbiting a yellow star, something was stirring. Captain Mike Ross read the message 3 times. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. An entire species was about to be wiped out. "Sir, should we report this to command?" asked his communications officer. Mike looked out at Earth's moon through his ship's window. The human fleet had been testing new weapons in the asteroid belt. Every ship was loaded with the latest military technology, ready for the war exercises. "No," Mike said slowly. "Send a message to all ships. We have a new mission." Within hours, the human fleet changed course. 30 warships turned toward the Kella system, their crews working around the clock to prepare for battle. They carried the finest soldiers Earth had ever produced, men and women who had grown up fighting on a world where everything tried to kill them. As the fleet jumped into hyperspace, Mike thought about the message. The aliens had called for help, expecting no one to come. They were wrong. Humans had a rule. When someone called for help, you answered. Back on Kella, Tira watched another city fall to the Vrak. The invaders were moving faster now, eager to finish their conquest. Soon they would reach the capital. "Elder," Nix called out, "I'm receiving a transmission." "From whom?" "The Deathworlders. They say they're coming." Tira felt a spark of hope, but it quickly faded. What could one species do against the might of the Vrak Empire? Even if these humans were as dangerous as the stories claimed, they were still just aliens from a distant world. "How long until they arrive?" she asked. 2 days. Tira looked at her people, all working desperately to save their world. 2 days might as well be forever. The Vrak would have won by then, but something in the human message bothered her. It wasn't just, "We're coming to help." It was, "We're coming." Short, simple, and somehow terrifying. In space, the Vrak fleet detected new ships approaching. The commander barely glanced at the report. More refugees running away, probably, he said. Ignore them. His officer looked worried. Sir, these. SAIPs, they're not running away. They're coming straight at us. How many ships? 30, sir. Small fleet. The commander laughed. 30 ships against our 300. They must be insane. But as the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kella system, something changed in the air. The Vrak had conquered many worlds, but they had never faced humans before. We're about to learn why Earth was called a death world. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like hungry wolves. Captain Mike Ross stood on the bridge of the U's Thunder, watching the Vrak ships spread across Kella's orbit like a metal plague. 300 ships, reported Lieutenant Jake Stone. Heavy cruisers, destroyers, and carrier ships. They outgun us 10-1. Mike smiled coldly. Good. I was hoping for a challenge. The crew laughed. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were humans who had survived gang wars in New Detroit, fought pirates in the asteroid mines, and served in the brutal campaigns on Mars. Fear was something they had left behind long ago. Commander Ross, came a transmission from the Vrak fleet. This system belongs to the Vrak Empire. Leave now or be destroyed. Mike picked up the communication device. This is Captain Ross of the Earth Defense Force. You have attacked innocent people. You have 30 seconds to surrender. Silence filled the space between the fleets. Then came laughter from the Vrak commander. 30 seconds? You have 30 ships against our 300. Are you insane? 25 seconds, Mike replied calmly. On Kella, Elder Tira and her people watched the space battle begin. The human ships looked tiny next to the massive Vrak vessels. But something felt different about these newcomers. The Deathworlders are actually challenging them, whispered Nix. They're going to die, another Kellan said sadly. But Tira noticed something. The human ships weren't retreating or trying to negotiate. They were moving into attack formation like predators surrounding prey. Time's up, Mike announced. The human fleet exploded into action. Their ships didn't charge forward like the Vrak expected. Instead, they scattered in all directions, moving with deadly precision. The Vrak fired their weapons, massive energy beams that could destroy mountains. But the human ships danced between the attacks like they were playing a game. Their pilots laughed as death missed them by inches. Impossible, shouted the Vrak commander. Nothing moves that fast. But he didn't understand. These humans had grown up dodging falling rocks in asteroid fields, racing through solar storms, and fighting in 3 dimensions where up and down meant nothing. Space combat was natural to them. The first human ship reached the Vrak formation. The U's Razor, commanded by Major Lisa Grant, slipped between 2 massive cruisers like a shark between whales. Target their engines, Lisa ordered her weapons officer. Ma'am, their armor is too thick. Our weapons can't. I didn't ask if we could penetrate their armor. Lisa cut him off. I asked you to target their engines. The Razor fired. Not at the thick armor plating, but at the thin connection points where the engines joined the ship. Human weapons weren't the most powerful in the galaxy, but they were precise. The first Vrak cruiser lost power and began to drift, and the second. The massive ships became floating targets as humans swarmed around them like angry bees. Sir, called out a Vrak officer, they're not trying to destroy our ships. They're disabling them. The commander watched in growing fear as his fleet fell apart. The humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. They took impossible risks, made insane maneuvers, and somehow survived every counterattack. One human ship flew straight at a Vrak destroyer. The Vrak crew prepared for a collision, but at the last second, the human vessel rolled underneath and fired upward into the ship's weakest point. The destroyer broke in half. How do they know our weak spots? Demanded the commander. His science officer was studying the human attacks. Sir, I think they've been watching us. Every shot they fire hits exactly where it will cause maximum damage with minimum energy. The truth was worse than the Vrak realized. Humans had been studying alien ship designs for years, preparing for the day they might face them in battle. They knew every weakness, every flaw, every vulnerable system. Captain Mike watched his fleet tear through the Vrak formation. Status. Report. 15 Vrak ships disabled, 8 destroyed. No human casualties. Good. Signal the planet. Tell them we're coming down. On Kella, the aliens watched in amazement as the mighty Vrak fleet fell apart. The Deathworlders weren't just winning. They were making it look easy. How is this possible? Asked Nyx. Elder Tira's old grandmother had been right. These humans were different from every other species in the galaxy. They didn't fight to conquer or steal. They fought because someone had asked for help. But the real shock came when human voices filled the communication channels. This is Sergeant Tom Baker of the 7th Marine Battalion. We're coming down to help you fight. Wait, Tira called back. You're going to land? On our planet? Of course. You called for help, didn't you? The Kellans looked at each other in confusion. Other species sent fleets to fight in space. But these humans were planning to come down and fight alongside them. The Vrak commander realized the same thing. They're going to invade the planet, he told his officers. Send all ground troops to defend our positions. But he made one terrible mistake. He thought the humans coming down would fight like civilized aliens. He was wrong. The human landing ships came down like meteors, streaking through Kella's atmosphere with their engines screaming. They didn't land at safe zones or prepared areas. They landed right in the middle of Vrak-controlled territory. Major Tom Baker kicked open the door of his transport before it even stopped moving. Behind him came 50 human Marines, each one carrying enough weapons to arm a small army. Welcome to Kella, boys, Tom shouted over the sound of gunfire. Let's show these gray bastards how we do things on Earth. The Marines spread out instantly, taking cover behind rocks, trees, and ruined buildings. They moved like they had been fighting on this planet their whole lives. The Vrak soldiers had been waiting for them. Hundreds of gray-skinned warriors with heavy armor and powerful weapons surrounded the landing zone. They opened fire immediately, but something went wrong with their perfect ambush. The humans didn't panic or retreat. They didn't even seem surprised. Contact front, called Sergeant Amy Chun, diving behind a fallen statue. Looks like about 200 hostiles. Only 200? Laughed Corporal Dave Wilson. I was hoping for more. The Vrak commander couldn't believe what he was hearing. These creatures were outnumbered 4 to 1, surrounded and under heavy fire. They should be begging for mercy. Instead, they were making jokes. The first human counterattack came from an impossible angle. Private Kelly Jones had somehow climbed a broken tower in the middle of the battle and was now firing down at the Vrak positions. How did she get up there? Demanded a Vrak officer. I don't know, sir. She just climbed. What the Vrak didn't understand was that humans were natural climbers. On Earth, children played on jungle gyms that would terrify most aliens. Kelly had grown up free climbing mountains for fun. More humans appeared in unexpected places. They crawled through drainage pipes, climbed over walls, and squeezed through gaps that should have been too small for them. Within minutes, they had surrounded their own ambushers. Sir, called a panicking Vrak soldier. They're behind us. How are they behind us? But the real shock came when the humans started their assault. They didn't advance slowly like civilized soldiers. They charged forward like wild animals, screaming battle cries and firing from the hip. The Vrak had heavy armor that could stop most weapons. But human bullets found every gap, every weak joint, every vulnerable spot. It was like fighting ghosts. They could see through steel. Major Tom Baker led the charge himself, running straight at a Vrak heavy weapons team. The aliens fired a rocket at him, but Tom dove to the side and kept running. The explosion threw dirt in his face, but he just wiped it off and smiled. "Is that all you've got?" he yelled. The Vrak soldiers began to retreat. They had conquered dozens of worlds, but they had never faced an enemy like this. These humans fought like demons, taking wounds that should have stopped them, and just getting angrier. In the ruined city, Elder Tira and her people watched from their hiding places. They saw human soldiers helping wounded Kellans, sharing their food with alien children, and treating their injuries with strange earth medicine. "They're not what I expected," Tira said to Nix. A young human medic was treating an injured Kellan child. The little alien was scared, but the human woman spoke softly and gently bandaged his wing. "There you go, little guy," said Medic Sarah Kim. "You'll be flying again in no time." The child chirped happily, and Sarah smiled. Then she picked up her weapon and ran back to the battle. This was what confused the Vrak most. These humans could switch from gentle healers to deadly warriors in seconds. They fought with terrifying fury, but they also protected the weak with their own lives. By sunset, the human Marines had pushed the Vrak back 20 miles. But this was just the beginning. More human ships were landing all over the planet. Not just soldiers, but engineers, doctors, and specialists. They brought food for hungry Kellans, medicine for the wounded, and equipment to repair damaged cities. "What are they doing?" asked a Vrak officer. His commander studied the reports with growing fear. "They're not just fighting us. They're helping the natives rebuild." This had never happened before. When the Vrak conquered a world, the aliens there either surrendered or died. They never found allies willing to die for them, but humans were different. They had come from across the galaxy, not for conquest or profit, but because someone had asked for help. Captain Mike Ross stood on a hill overlooking the battlefield, watching as people work. Some were fighting Vrak soldiers. Others were building hospitals for wounded Kellans. A few were playing with alien children, teaching them Earth games. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Jake Stone, "the Vrak are requesting negotiations." Mike looked at the burning Vrak positions in the distance. "Tell them they can negotiate with the Kellans. We're just here to make sure it's a fair conversation." The war for Kella was far from over, but the galaxy was about to learn something new about the species. From the Deathworld called Earth, 3 days after the humans landed, the Vrak Empire sent reinforcements. 500 fresh ships dropped out of hyperspace, carrying their most elite warriors and deadliest weapons. General Crux, the Vrak's finest military commander, stood on his flagship's bridge and studied the reports from Kella. What he read made his blood run cold. "These humans have taken half the planet in 3 days?" he asked his aide. "Yes, sir. And they're still advancing." Crux had conquered 40 worlds for the Empire. He had never seen anything like this. "How many casualties have they taken?" "That's the strange part, sir. According to our reports, they've lost less than 30 soldiers." "Impossible. We had thousands of troops on that planet." But the numbers didn't lie. The human forces were small, but incredibly effective. They fought like they could read Vrak minds, always attacking where the enemy was weakest. On Kella, Major Tom Baker crouched behind a broken wall with his squad, planning their next move. In front of them was a Vrak fortress that had resisted all attacks for weeks. "How do we get past those walls, Major?" asked Sergeant Amy Chun. Tom studied the fortress through his scope. The Vrak had built it on top of a hill, with thick walls and heavy weapons. It looked impossible to take, but Tom was smiling. "We don't go past the walls," he said. "We go under them." The humans had discovered something the Vrak didn't know about. Kella, The planet was full of underground caves and tunnels. The bird-like Kellans had built their cities above ground, but their ancestors had lived in the cave systems. Elder Tira had shown the humans these forgotten passages. Our people used them long ago, she explained. We thought they were useless. On Earth, we have a saying, Tom had replied. One person's useless tunnel is another person's secret entrance. Now, as night fell, 50 human soldiers crawled through the ancient caves. They moved in complete darkness, using their training from Earth's deepest mines and underwater caves. The Vrak guards on the walls saw nothing. They watched the open ground in front of their fortress, confident that no one could approach unseen. They were wrong. At midnight, Tom and his team emerged inside the fortress courtyard. They had crawled through 3 miles of tunnel in complete silence. Team 1 in position, Tom whispered into his radio. Team 2 ready, came the reply from Sergeant Chun, whose squad had taken a different tunnel. Team 3 standing by, reported Corporal Wilson. The attack began from all sides at once. The Vrak soldiers found themselves fighting enemies who seemed to appear out of nowhere. Human soldiers emerged from sewers, storage rooms, and ventilation shafts. They're everywhere, screamed a Vrak commander. How did they get inside? But the humans weren't just inside the fortress. They were already leaving it, carrying stolen Vrak weapons and equipment. By the time the aliens organized a defense, the raiders were gone. General Crux received the report with growing anger. They took our fortress in 20 minutes? Yes, sir. And they freed 200 Kellan prisoners. This was becoming a pattern. The humans didn't fight like any military force Crux had ever faced. They struck fast, hit hard, and disappeared before anyone could fight back. They rescued civilians, destroyed supply lines, and somehow always knew exactly where to attack. What really frustrated the Vrak was how the humans treated their prisoners. Instead of killing captured Vrak soldiers, they gave them medical treatment and released them with a message. Tell your commander that Earth doesn't make war on soldiers who surrender. Many Vrak soldiers began to question their orders. Why were they fighting to steal crystals from peaceful bird people? Why were their leaders afraid of negotiations? The breaking point came when human engineers helped rebuild a Kellan hospital that Vrak bombers had destroyed. Vrak soldiers watched from their positions as humans worked alongside Kellan doctors, treating wounded civilians from both sides of the conflict. Sir, asked a young Vrak officer, are we the bad guys in this war? His commander couldn't answer. Meanwhile, Captain Mike Ross was coordinating the space battle from his ship. The Vrak reinforcement fleet was trying to break through to the planet, but the human ships danced around them like fighters against elephants. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Vrak flagship, reported Lieutenant Stone. Put it through. General. Crux's face appeared on the screen, gray skin dark with frustration. Human commander, I demand you surrender immediately. Mike raised an eyebrow. You demand? You're the ones invading someone else's planet. This world belongs to the Vrak Empire now. Says who? The question seemed to confuse Crux. Says our right of conquest. I see. And who gave you that? Right? Crux opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in his military career, he couldn't answer a simple question. Mike leaned forward. General, here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw your forces from Kella. You're going to return everything you stole, and you're going to apologize to the Kellan people. And if I refuse, Mike smiled coldly, then we'll show you what humans do to bullies. General Crux ended the transmission and turned to his officers. His face was dark with rage. Prepare all weapons, he ordered. We're going to show these Deathworlders what happens when you challenge the Vrak Empire. Sir, his aide said carefully, perhaps we should consider their offer. Our losses have been silence. Crux slammed his fist on the control panel. No alien species has ever defeated the Vrak. I will not be the first general to lose. But deep down, Crux was afraid. In 40 campaigns, he had never faced an enemy like this. The humans fought without fear, protected the weak, and somehow made his own soldiers question their purpose. On Kella, the final battle was about to begin. Major Tom Baker gathered his Marines around a holographic map of the planet. Red dots marked Vrak positions, while blue dots showed human forces. "Listen up, people," Tom said. "Intelligence says Crux is planning one last push. He's going to throw everything he has at us." "How many troops, sir?" asked Sergeant Chun. "About 10,000 fresh soldiers, plus heavy armor and air support." The Marines looked at each other. They were outnumbered 20 to 1. "Sir," said Corporal Wilson, "we've only got 500 combat troops left." Tom grinned. "Then it's almost a fair fight." The laughter from his soldiers made the nearby Cullen allies shake their heads in amazement. These humans were either incredibly brave or completely insane. Elder Tira approached the group. "Major Baker, my people want to help you fight." "With respect, Elder, your people aren't soldiers. This is going to get ugly." "Neither were we. Until the Vrak came," Tira replied firmly. "This is our world. We won't hide while others die for us." Tom looked at the bird-like alien's determined face and nodded slowly. "All right. But you follow our lead, and you get out if things go bad." As dawn broke over Kella, the Vrak attack began. Thousands of gray-skinned soldiers poured across the landscape, supported by flying gunships and heavy tanks. But the humans were ready. They had spent the week turning the capital city into a maze of traps and ambushes. Every street had been prepared, every building fortified. When the Vrak entered the city, they found themselves in a nightmare. Human snipers fired from hidden positions. Marines appeared from manholes and storm drains. Kellan civilians threw rocks and bottles from rooftops, then disappeared into secret passages. "Where are they?" screamed a Vrak commander as his unit took fire from all directions. "I can't see them." The humans had learned urban warfare in the rubble of bombed Earth cities. They knew how to use every shadow, every broken wall, every piece of debris as cover. But the real surprise came when the Vrak reached the city center. Captain Mike Ross was waiting for them. He had landed with a company of Earth's finest soldiers, the ones who had fought in the deepest space stations and the harshest alien worlds. They stood in formation in the main square, weapons ready, faces calm. "Surrender now," Mike called out through a speaker, "and no one else has to die." General Crux himself had come down for the final battle. He looked at the small group of humans and laughed. "You think 50 soldiers can stop my army?" "I think," Mike said quietly, "you don't understand who you're fighting." The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. The humans moved like a machine designed for war. They covered each other with deadly precision, advanced and retreated as one unit, and fought with a fury that seemed to come from the planet itself. But it wasn't just their skill that broke the Vrak. It was their purpose. These humans hadn't come to conquer or steal. They had come because someone asked for help. They fought not for glory or profit, but because it was the right thing to do. When Kellan children ran out to help wounded human soldiers, the Vrak began to understand what they were really fighting against. When an old Kellan woman shared her food with hungry human Marines, more Vrak soldiers laid down their weapons. When Elder Tira herself bandaged a wounded Vrak prisoner with the same care she showed her own people, General Crux finally realized the truth. He had brought an army to fight heroes. The war ended not with a great battle, but with a quiet conversation. Crux met with Captain Mike and Elder Tira in the ruins of the Kellan capital. "What do you want?" Crux asked. "For you too," "Go home," Mike replied, "and leave these people in peace." "That's all? That's all?" Crux looked at the human captain for a long moment. "You could have destroyed my fleet, killed all my soldiers. Why didn't you?" Mike shrugged. "Because that's not who we are." Within a week, the wrack fleet was gone. They took nothing with them but wounded pride and hard-learned respect for the species from Earth. The Kellans rebuilt their world with human help. Elder Tira established the first embassy to Earth, beginning a friendship that would last for generations. And across the galaxy, other species heard the story of Kella. They learned that when someone sent an SOS to Earth, the Deathworlders didn't just answer. They came with relentless fury, infinite compassion, and the absolute certainty that some things were worth fighting for.